So here is the thing that happens. A group of smart people gets together to make an important decision. The people in the room are experienced and credentialed. Some of them have spent their entire careers preparing for exactly this kind of moment. And they make a decision that is catastrophically wrong. And well, this happens a lot. More than it should anyway. And the explanation people reach for is usually that there must have been corruption or unusual pressure, or maybe these people weren't actually as smart as advertised. But that explanation has a problem, because sometimes you can watch the whole thing happen in slow motion with documentation and there is no corruption. Just a room full of super competent professionals arriving together at the wrong decision. That is exactly what happened to NASA in 1986. An engineer named Roger Boisjoli has data showing the rubber seals on the Challenger shuttle's booster rockets will fail in cold temperatures, and the overnight temperature is forecast to drop to 18 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's bad. He gets on a conference call with managers the night before the launch and makes the case clearly. Do not launch tomorrow. The managers disagree, and the launch proceeds.
3, 2, 1, and liftoff. Liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
Good roll program confirmed. Engines throttling up, 3 engines now at 104%.
Challenger, go at throttle up.
73 seconds after liftoff, Challenger breaks apart and 7 people die. Now the instinct here is to find the person responsible, the managers. Someone who knew and didn't care. And there were bad decisions made that night, of course, absolutely. But here's the thing that makes this story interesting rather than just sad. NASA spent the years after Challenger doing everything right. They investigated. They published a public report about exactly what went wrong. They created new safety review boards, new oversight processes, new roles specifically designed to make sure a warning like Boisjoli's could never get dismissed like that again. And then, in 2003, 17 years later, the Space Shuttle Columbia broke apart during re-entry. 7 more people died. And the investigation afterwards found that the organizational causes were essentially identical to Challenger. At some point, the individuals stopped being enough of an explanation, because the individuals changed, but the failure didn't. So what exactly is going on here? So after Challenger, NASA did something sensible. They got a psychologist involved. Not because anyone thought the engineers had feelings that needed processing, but because someone had the presence of mind to ask, why did a room full of smart, experienced people talk themselves into launching a shuttle they had been told the night before might explode? And the answer they found had a name. A psychologist named Irving Janis had spent years looking at exactly this kind of failure. Groups of competent people making decisions that seem afterwards completely indefensible. He called it groupthink. So here is the short version. When a group of people works closely together for a long time, something happens to disagreement. It gets socially uncomfortable. If everyone in the room is moving towards a conclusion and you are the one raising your hand to disagree, well, now you are the difficult person. You are the one who doesn't get it, the one holding things up. And most people, most of the time, would rather be wrong with the group than right by themselves. That's it. That's basically the whole thing. But please don't leave the video just yet, because the smarter the group, the worse this gets. Smart people are better at convincing themselves that the thing they already wanted to do is actually the correct thing to do, because the reasoning sounds airtight. NASA read all of this, they understood it, and they built new structures specifically designed to fix it. An official process for raising safety concerns. New people whose literal job was to ask uncomfortable questions. And then Columbia happened. Here is what the investigation found. 16 days before Columbia broke apart, engineers had flagged a potential problem. Foam had struck the heat shield during launch. They requested satellite imaging to check the damage. The request went up the chain, got looked at by managers who had already decided it probably wasn't serious, and quietly went nowhere. So the engineers were just ignored. So here is the obvious question. NASA knew about groupthink. They had read the research on it, so they had built entire systems specifically designed to stop it from happening again. And then it happened again anyway. So how does that work? There's a concept that explains it. A sociologist named Diane Vaughan found it while studying Challenger, and it's so simple it's almost annoying when you hear it. Foam kept breaking off the shuttle's external fuel tank during launch, regularly. It had happened on multiple previous missions, and after each of those missions, the shuttle landed safely. So somewhere in the back of everyone's head, foam strikes stopped being a scary thing. It's just something that happens. Nothing went wrong last time, so this time feels fine. And last time felt fine because the time before was also fine. So you are not being reckless. You are actioning based on the available evidence you have. Vaughan called this normalization of deviance, which sounds complicated but just means the slightly wrong thing stops feeling wrong if you do it enough times without consequence. So when engineers flagged a foam strike on Columbia's heat shield, the managers reviewing it weren't seeing a warning. They were seeing a thing that had happened before and been fine. So they weren't being careless. They were pattern matching, but the pattern was just wrong. And this isn't a NASA thing. Every institution that runs a repeated process does this. The threshold for concern shifts a little each time nothing goes catastrophically wrong, and then a little more, and then a little more. The people inside aren't even aware it's happening because from inside it just feels like experience, like knowing how things actually work, as opposed to how the nervous newcomers think they work. It feels like wisdom. And sometimes it is wisdom, but other times 7 people die. The individuals changed between Challenger and Columbia, which means fixing the individuals was never going to be enough. Look, if this is the kind of thing you usually think about, this channel is for you. So if you are finding this useful, hit the like button and subscribe. It genuinely helps more than you think. And if you want to give me your opinion about all of this, or maybe you just want to say hi, the comments are right there. Okay, so now back to it. Now I have some good news and some bad news. The good news is that there are actually solutions to this. The bad news is you are not going to love how this ends. The most straightforward fix is something the military figured out called red teaming. The idea is simple. You officially assign someone the job of trying to break the plan, not just as a suggestion, but as a requirement. Their whole role is to be the difficult person, which means the difficult person is no longer being difficult. They are just doing their job. The social cost of dissent disappears because dissent is now on the agenda. People may still not like you, but now that's your job. It works. There's decent evidence it works, and smart institutions use it. There is also research from an organizational psychologist named Amy Edmondson showing that teams where people feel safe raising concerns without professional consequences catch errors earlier, perform better, and paradoxically report more problems than other teams. Not because more problems happen, but because people actually say something when they notice one. Also works, also decent evidence on it. NASA, after Challenger, implemented versions of both. New safety reporting systems and new review structures. Official channels specifically designed so that an engineer with a concern could raise it without it dying quietly in a manager's inbox. And then Columbia happened anyway. I think this is the second time I say this in this video. So all the systems existed, but the problem was that the culture around those systems hadn't changed. And culture, it turns out, is not a process. You can't just implement it. You can't put it in a report and tick the box. Culture is what actually happens to people. What actually happened to Roger Boisjoli after he raised the Challenger warning and testified before Congress about it is that within a year he was on stress-related medical leave. He never worked in aerospace again in any meaningful way. Nobody fired him, nobody punished him officially, but it was all managed. But everyone watching learned something, and what they learned had nothing to do with the new safety reporting system. This is the ugly part. You can build the perfect room of people, the right processes, the right roles, the right official channels for dissent, and if the people who use those channels keep quietly disappearing, everyone else will notice, and they will act accordingly. Okay, so here is where we stand right now. The problem is understood and has been for decades. The solutions are documented, tested, and available. Red teams, psychological safety, structured dissent, leaders who speak last. These things work when institutions genuinely use them. The question is why institutions don't genuinely use them. And the answer is boring and a bit sad, but that's it. Institutions are not primarily designed to find the truth. They are designed to function, to keep moving, to keep producing, keep the people inside them reasonably aligned and reasonably motivated. Cohesion is useful, consensus is efficient, and a room full of people who broadly agree gets things done in a way that a room full of people constantly challenging each other simply doesn't, which means the fix isn't a process. It's a genuine, sustained institutional commitment to valuing the person who is right over the person who is agreeable. And that commitment has to be demonstrated repeatedly, visibly, in how people actually get treated. Most institutions say they have this commitment, but you can tell how genuine it is by asking one question. What happened to the last person who was right when the consensus was wrong? If the answer is that they got promoted, then great. If the answer is that they were quietly managed out of the building while officially nobody did anything wrong, then the safety reporting system and the red team and the psychological safety workshop are decorative. Everyone inside already knows what the institution actually rewards, and they will act accordingly. This is not a reason to give up on the fixes. The point is just that they are not self-executing. Somebody has to actually protect the difficult person. And that somebody is usually a senior leader who has to decide in a specific moment whether truth or cohesion is more important. Most of the time they choose cohesion, but maybe this will change more and more. Hope you enjoyed this video and see you in the next one.